Hi there. Welcome. Let's get ready, participants. Thank you so much for viewing this video. My name is Sarah Bellinger, and I'm an Assistant Director of Admission at UMass Amherst, and I'll be doing a session with you in July, but doing some videos that I hope will be helpful as you go transition from high school to college. The first of our series is about financial aid, and it's a big topic. We can't obviously cover everything, but we've got an expert here who is going to run us through some of the most common questions that are asked. So, Kale, you want to do your intros and take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Kale Miata. I am the Assistant Director of Financial Aid Services. And today I'm happy to go over some common questions that come up, and we'll dive right into it.
Great, thanks, Kale. So my first question is, as these students are all transitioning, they're graduating from high school this week probably, or last week, what
Mhm.
should they be looking out for from their colleges, either from communication, or what should they be doing to prep themselves financially to be successful in the fall?
Yeah, definitely. I would say one of the most important things is keeping your ears open for any kind of communication. So any emails that might be coming your way. And also you should have access to your Spire portal. So logging into your Spire account, on the right-hand side, there's this box that says to-do list. So on there, if there's any items that you do have to complete, it's going to pop up on there. So keeping a close eye on that, as well as other communications like email, is very important.
Great, thanks. So some of these students might be heading to UMass, but they're going all over the country. So just like we call it Spire, that's our system, your college is going to have a portal, a place that you can go in, a place that you can see your financial aid information. So just like our Spire, be sure to check your college's portal and to make sure that you can access it and check out, all your colleges will have financial aid resources as well. And so thinking about let's push ahead, kind of thinking about once they are students in college and knowing that they're at a bunch of different colleges, what are some of the do's and don'ts? So they might get a refund, they might, be filling out loan applications. What kind of things in the first year, once they are students, are good kind of do's and don'ts?
Yeah, so I think, coming back to that first question, it's really important to keep an eye on what kind of communication might be coming your way, because there might be some items that you might have to complete. And you had mentioned a little bit about refunds. So if you are, let's say, overpaying, or you need excess funds to pay for textbooks or anything like that, there should be an office at the university where you make payments to. And they're probably going to require that you do some sort of setup where you connect your bank account, so any excess funds can be deposited there, so you can use it for any expenses such as textbooks. So those are some important things to keep in mind as well.
That's a great point. So for some students, I know textbooks are a huge, expense to be paid. And Kel, in your experience, do schools sometimes have funds that students could apply for if, let's say, they can't cover it, they don't have the cash right in the fall?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely something worth looking into. Sometimes universities offer scholarships for textbooks specifically, and they might have like a specific department within the office dedicated to assisting students that might be in a difficult position. So if you reach out to these offices, they might be able to assist you in the purchase of textbooks, for example. So it's definitely worth asking and to kind of see what's around there. And another thing I recommend with textbooks is, if you can, get used textbooks, right? Because brand new, they can definitely be expensive. And talking to your peers that have maybe already gone through their first year, they're going to have a lot of that insider knowledge that they can share with you as well.
Yeah, I think advisors too at a place like
Hmm.
UMass, or peer advisors, those any student to student contact you can get and talk about expenses and what to expect in an art class, and those kind of what I would call hidden expenses that pop up, lab fees and things like that, for students. Sometimes they're built right into their bill and they can see them, student activities fees and things like that. And in terms of when students have to think about paying their bill, usually that's in the summertime and that's due. Do you have a sense, and can you talk, or I know you have a sense because I know you know this, but can you talk a little bit about payment plans? And I know some colleges treat that differently, and how students go about navigating that. If they can't pay their full installment, can they set up a payment plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So in most universities, they probably have some kind of a plan to assist you through the process. So for example, at UMass Amherst, you can go on a installment plan. So it gets divided up into, let's say, monthly payments, for example. So let's say that you have a balance of $10,000 and it's installed for 10 installments, then that would be about $1,000 that you'd be making payment for every month. So there's going to be plans like that. Some things to keep in mind that there might be a one-time fee, for example. It might be something like $50, for example. But that's really going to fluctuate based on what university you're going to. And just keep in mind that, maybe there's an interest charge associated with it. I think in most places that's not the case, and that's not the case at UMass Amherst. But just really kind of understanding the parameters around that so you know exactly what you're going into.
Yeah, I think it can help some students if they're, need to spread that payment out. So that's a nice option. I never knew about that option when I was a student. So which was 100 years ago, as we know, but it's really great to have that opportunity, I think. And I know we're going to use UMass as as examples because it's what we know best and it's where we're working right now. But I know at UMass we've got a great database of scholarships for students once they are students, and I know other colleges have that too. And what do you recommend for students kind of navigating that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk about scholarships, I always recommend starting at a micro level and kind of expanding from there. So what I mean by that is, maybe talk to local organizations that you might be familiar with. If you're just finishing up high school, talking to your guidance counselor, any resources that they might be aware of as well. So the benefit of starting local and at a smaller pool is that you have a higher chance of probably winning these scholarships, right? So the way I think of it is as you expand the pool, the more competition that you're going to see in this, scholarship race kind of. So some things to keep in mind is to start local and then gradually expand from there. And then also at your university, there's probably going to be scholarship resources. So for example, at UMass Amherst, there's a resource called Academic Works, which is a very good resource where you can put an application in and it automatically filters through and notifies you for potential scholarships that you might qualify for. So definitely check your university scholarship options and see what you might qualify for. And the key thing here is that it's a numbers game. The more you apply for, the better probability that you're going to have. So some things like that to keep in mind as well.
Absolutely. And some students may have already done scholarship applications through high schools or communities, and they're bringing those funds with them to college. So can you talk a little bit about when and how a student needs to report that? And, if they get $25 from a local booster club, or if they get $1,000, and what the differences there might be, kind of how they report that to their financial aid offices, and if they always have to report them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, let's do an example. So, let's say you get $1,000 from a local scholarship organization, and the scholarship actually requires that it gets dispersed through the university. So, then what you want to do is you want to, the scholarship organization usually sends that payment directly to the payment office of the university, and then you're going to see that money show up on your account. So, let's say you owe $2,000 and you get $1,000 scholarship. You just subtract the two and you're going to have $1,000 remaining. So that's kind of one way that it could play out. Some scholarships actually do direct payments to the student so that it doesn't have a negative effect on the cost of attendance. That's more of a complex issue, and I probably won't dive into it too much here. It doesn't come up often. But let's say that you get a $100 scholarship, for example, and it's designed directly to go to the student. So in that case, the scholarship organization might directly disperse that fund to the student. So the student just gets that check and they would be able to use that towards textbooks or whatever they need to for educational expenses.
Great. Yeah, I know in our community here in Amherst and Northampton, there is a community scholarship, and
Mhm.
oftentimes those are dispersed to the colleges um,
Yes.
through my personal experience with that. But so of course, then you're reporting it, and it's being put right into your bill, and all those things are taken into consideration. What about once a student is on campus and they're confused? You know, confusion happens, I like to say, in financial aid especially. And where do they go? And what's a reasonable for a student to expect? Kind of a wait to see a financial aid counselor. How long should they kind of plan ahead? Like, oh, gee, I want to get this done in November.
Mhm.
Let's back it up. And how much do I, what's a reasonable time frame to expect? You're all very busy. You deal with all the students and their financial situation. So, you know, guide a little bit on kind of best practices for students to prepare themselves to have those conversations and what kind of things can be covered.
Yeah, great question. So the how busy it is at the financial aid office, it definitely ebbs and flows. So what I would recommend is actually going right into the office to ask your question. So I think that's the best way to do it, and you might have the highest success rate. And usually the financial aid office has some kind of a phone line as well, so you could try calling. During peak semesters, you might say, it might be difficult to get into direct contact over the phone. So assuming that you're on campus, you could just walk into the financial aid office and see if you can set up an appointment with a counselor. That's, I think, the most effective and most efficient way to go about it. So I would recommend that students do that to try to get into contact with the financial aid office to get the appropriate help.
And what kind of things should they kind of prepare and bring with them to have those meetings be effective? Depending on, I know there's lots of different questions that can get asked, but what are some of the things that are helpful that you see students bring in that you could say, oh, this is great that you've brought that?
Yeah, I would say having a list of questions, right? And in most cases, this isn't kind of an issue because at that point you know exactly what you're going to be asking. But sometimes there might be that occasion where you leave the office and then you remember there's something else. So maybe writing those down so you have an organized list of questions that you want to ask while you're in the office. In addition to that, some kind of identifier, depending on what kind of which university you're at. For example, at UMass Amherst, you would have what's called a Spire ID number. So we would use that number to look up your financial aid account so we can pull up details in regards to the account. And without that, it's very difficult to get a picture of your personalized account. So definitely have some form of ID number associated with your university.
And I know that parents often are trying to be helpful and they might call the financial aid office, or even if you have a scholarship that is helping you with college, they might call with questions to a financial aid office. How does a student, what I'm going to call a proxy, and I'm not sure that's the right word, how does a student tell a financial aid office who it's okay to talk to? And on the other side, do students have the option to tell a financial aid office who it's not okay for them to share information with? And kind of how do they go about that?
Yeah, this is a great question because we come across it all the time where parents might to communicate, they might want to communicate with us directly, and we can't actually share that information sometimes unless the student has granted access. So every university is probably going to have a little bit of a different system to approach this. But there is this thing called FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And the way I like to explain it is it's kind of like an ATM, right? So in order to access your own account and your own funds, you have to enter a 4-digit PIN number that's unique to you. So what the student can do, for example, at UMass, they can add their parent on their account that they can talk to us. And they would just give them a 4-digit PIN number, for example, like 1234, right? So then when the parent calls in with their question, they say, I'm the parent of so and so, and my PIN number is 1234. We say, excellent, we confirmed your FERPA access code, and we can go over the information tied to the account. You had mentioned, earlier, what if there's, something that, or somebody that you don't want them to have access to, or any information that you don't want them to have. If that's the case, you'd want to communicate with the office directly, but the system at your university also may be able to do that for you automatically. But every university is going to be a little bit different. So definitely contact the office to see if you can navigate through that.
That's great. And typically bills are getting sent to students, or do they automatically get sent to parents? And I know that's a kind of a university specific thing, but what do we do at UMass about that?
Yeah. So, for example, if you're an authorized payer, you can set it up so that you get automatic notifications as a parent. So, let's say there's a balance of, let's say, $2,000, for example. Then the student and the parent will get a notification indicating that there's going to be payment due at XYZ date for XYZ amount. And then you would kind of go from there. Usually it's going to be an online process where you just click on the button that says pay bill, maybe, and then you just link your bank account and wire the transfer.
So is it safe to say that one of the things students could do to kind of help them in the summer is set that up so parents have that access and or the ability to, if they want it, parents, guardians, adults, to see billing information, might make it a little bit more organized in the fall.
Yes, that would be a good step to take just to prepare for
Great.
the bill that's upcoming. So making sure that you add your parent as an authorized payer as well. The university offices usually do a pretty good job of communicating this. So the parent will be probably knowledgeable about this, and the student should be as well. So it should be fairly easy to set that up.
Great, thanks. So, we're talking about first semester a lot, and second semester comes and there's another bill that's going to come. When does that usually happen? And when do students, kind of, we'll use UMass as our example again. When do students have to pay that bill or when do they have to set up a payment plan? When do they kind of have to get that squared away for the second semester?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the fall semester, you might be looking at around August or so for a payment, and for the second semester, you might be looking around December or so, where you make that payment. And keep in mind that if you do go into a payment plan, you're going to be spreading out that payment. So you might be making payments throughout the semester as opposed to making a lump sum payment in December in that example.
Great, that's perfect. And this is something in all my years of higher education, I've met lots of students and families who kind of forget or don't realize sometimes that they have to reapply for financial aid. And when does that start to come upon students? And, when should they be marking their calendars for? Because I think mark your calendar, put it in your phones now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important thing is the FAFSA that you need to complete. The FAFSA is going to become available every single year on October 1st. That's what it is as of now, and I think it's going to stay that way. So just mark it on the calendar. October 1st is when the FAFSA becomes available, and definitely get it started then. If not, you definitely want to get it in by March.
And again, check your university and college for their deadlines. They may have different deadlines for returning students, and it might be a little bit more forgiving, but you try not to keep that till the last minute, because you want to be assured that in your sophomore year you're getting the funds, that are due for you. So it's easy to forget. That is something that I know students, that creeps up on families and students quite a bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I can definitely elaborate on that as well. So with other institutions, this is really crucial. So let's say that you forget to renew your FAFSA, you forget to go back in there and do it, and it's July, and then at that point you complete it. So you might actually lose some financial aid that was dispersed on your account, and you really don't want that. So that's just a matter of a deadline. If you had completed it a few months prior, maybe you see an extra $5,000 on the account, right? That's big money. So you really want to make sure that you complete the FAFSA on time. based on what your university's deadlines are.
And I know this gets complicated, and I want to talk a little bit about time to degree, I think is the phrase,
Okay.
where students have a certain number of semesters where they're eligible for federal funds. Am I using the lingo right? You can cover it better, but kind of just brush on that, because it isn't an unlimited, you can stay in college for 10 years and still be getting the same kind of financial aid.
Exactly. So at a university, there's this thing called SAP that you're going to have to meet. SAP stands for Satisfactory Academic Progress. And that's going to require certain things like a GPA requirement, for example. And if you reach out to your financial aid office or the university, they're going to have a list on what the specific breakdowns are. But as long as you're consistently enrolled, you shouldn't have much issue in terms of getting funds consistently. It does become a problem where you start taking much, much longer than what was initially scheduled to complete your degree. So those are some things to definitely keep in mind, is to try to stay on track and make sure that you don't go over these parameters.
Yeah, that is something that I know can sneak up. If a student falls behind on credits and whatnot, that can kind of sometimes catch up. And you just said something that made me want to ask a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
And now I can't remember what it was, because I
Oh,
was thinking
okay.
it had to do with time to degree. If it comes back to me, I'll ask it.
Sounds good.
But do you have anything we haven't talked about that are kind of tips or things that you hear a lot or you get questioned about a lot that you think would be helpful for these students to know?
Change of circumstance. I think that's a really big one. Especially with COVID and things like that, we might be seeing a lot of families' finances fluctuating. So let's say that your freshman year, you get a full financial aid package. And then your second year, going into your sophomore year, your financial aid package suddenly changes. The financial aid process is very complex, and the FAFSA has a complex algorithm also. But the key thing is it pulls financial information from the prior year. So it's always 2 years beforehand. So let's say that suddenly you lose all this financial aid. It might turn out that on your FAFSA, it's showing that there's a lot of income on there. Let's say that your adjusted gross income is, let's say, 200,000, for example. But that's not reflecting what's happening in real life, let's say. So due to COVID, maybe there's a job loss and your income, let's say for 2021, is actually about 58,000 as opposed to the 200,000 that we mentioned earlier. That's a circumstance where you could probably do an appeal with the university. And to really simplify this, it's pretty much saying, hey, look, we used to make this money in the past, but because of whatever reason, it's not the case anymore. We just don't have this money, and it's going to be really tough for us. Is there anything that you can do? Can you help us? And then there's an appeal process that you can go through, and that might qualify you for more financial aid. Most universities, they have a process like this, so definitely look into it if this is a circumstance that you might fit into.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I think what we're hoping to get across today is one of the things: ask a lot of questions. This is a complicated process. This is sometimes a hard topic. Students and families don't often want to disclose or talk about money. It's in our culture, it's not what we do a lot. So it does feel for a lot of families and students uncomfortable. But know that the financial aid professionals in and at your universities are well versed in this. This is what they do every day. They are trying to help. They have the goal, as we all do in higher education, of helping you through this process and trying to make it you know, as reasonable for your family as possible. So ask a lot of questions for sure. I did think of the question, and
Perfect.
it's about loan counseling in terms of there are. I'm understanding that if you're getting a loan, or if you're eligible for certain programs or loans, that there may be required like sessions that students have to go to on the front end and on kind of before graduation, so they have an understanding. Can any thoughts or tips or tricks on those kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, my dogs are yapping a little bit in the background. Hopefully you can't hear it too much. But some things to keep in mind when you're talking about loans is that you're going to have access to subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So that ratio can actually fluctuate based on what your financial information is on the FAFSA. But you will have access to the federal loans, assuming that you qualify. And the dollar amount that you can gain access to can fluctuate depending on what year you are. So freshman year, you're going to have access to 5,500. Sophomore year, you're going to have access to 6,500. And junior year, you're going to have access to 7,500. Just keep in mind that that's something that you're going to have access to. And if you have any questions about repayment, how that works, taking a gap year, gap semester, you can always go to the financial aid office and we're able to assist you as well.
Great. Yeah, I think there's so much to learn and know about this that it can also seem daunting. So we're going to go back to just ask, just go into your financial aid office, understand that they might be busy. It might be a very busy time. It might be a slower time, but they may have I know one college that I'm familiar with, when you walk in and you go to their reception area, they'll set an appointment. It might be for the next day. But it might be for that day. So again, kind of be patient, but be ready with your questions and keep asking. I think that's really super important as you go through this process. I did enjoy the guest spot from your dog. Is there anything else before we wrap up today, Kale, that you can think of, that anything that you can think of that we didn't cover? Any tips or anything?
Yeah, sorry, it was cutting out just a little bit, but I think those are some key points to definitely think about. And just remember that if there's anything that you're stuck on, any questions that come up, you can always reach out to the financial aid office and we're happy to assist.
Yeah. All right. Oh, there they go again. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I know it is a busy time for you all, so I appreciate that you've taken the time out to talk to all of us. And I hope the students at Let's Get Ready will enjoy our video here, and I will see them all in July. But thanks a lot and have a great day, everyone. See you
Thank you
later.
so much.
Bye. Thanks, Gail.
Bye-bye.